Tecoria Jones. I'm a native of Columbia, South Carolina. Um, and wow, the journey here has been um, it's been long, but it's been worth every single part of it. Um, are we going to talk a little bit more now about like my background? Is this
Yeah,
now?
I think that would be
Sure,
great. You could just say your bio,
sure,
your background, how
sure.
things started.
Well, I am a single mom of six. They're from 22 to 4, and this
Two,
started.
four.
My,
You have a 4-year-old?
yeah, 22. I have a 4-year-old. Yes, he just turned 4 in September.
You have a 4-year-old, and how old are your other kids?
My other kids, my daughters are 22, 19, 17, and 14, and I have two boys that are 4. I'm sorry, 8 and 4.
Wow.
So yeah, um, but and honestly, it was becoming a mom that really made all of this necessary in my life. So from somewhat of the beginning, I told secrets in a family where that was unforgivable, and to be gentle, I saw every kind of abuse there is, days at a time, weekly, monthly, years upon years. And, that's trauma, that's complex PTSD. I didn't trust anyone. I did not belong anywhere. And I did not know I didn't understand what love was. Then I had some kids. I had my first little baby, and she was premature. And I swore to myself and I swore to her that I was not going to let her grow up like I did. But I didn't know any better. I just wanted to do that. But I didn't know how to do it. So that meant I was grossly unsuccessful. I mean, she had a mom that was depressed and anxious, emotionally ungrounded. What else was going to happen for this child who had a mom who had such a rough life? What else was going to happen? She didn't know any better. I didn't know any better. So it got hard, and there were, I spanked her. Um, I got a case because I spanked her too hard, and I didn't know any better. That's all I knew how to do. Um, but that case got me a peer support parent, and that saved my life. And I'm not using that phrase lightly because I had depression, anxiety, all of those things are real. And there were times when I had considered, like, how can I can't do this for my kids. Like, I can't do it. And there were times when I thought about, well, how can they grow up without me? Would it be better like that? So there was real emotional. Um, it was hard, but then when she came into my life, she saw me. She looked me in my eyes, and she knew, as a single parent, she knew what I was feeling. She knew the struggles. She knew the hardships. She knew the successes, and she made me feel like I was real again. And she made me feel like I was not some blip on the screen or some anomaly or some very poorly made comic in a very poorly made magazine somewhere. She gave me back some of my confidence, some of myself. And in doing that, I slowly became aware of ways I could grow as a parent, ways I could change change the environment, change myself, look at things differently. And there was nothing like that experience. I'm so
That was
thankful
more than
for
20
her.
years ago, right, Tecoria? That
Oh
was like
yeah.
that was
No,
more than
that I would say how that was 15 years ago.
15 years ago.
15
Yeah,
years ago.
and I would so I just want to say thank you for going there with us because it's not, I'm sure that's not the best time of your life. I mean, it's like, so thank you for going there with us. But I also want to say I want to say that I want to get to the journey and where you are now as well. Because like I know you as a complete like tiger, I don't want to say badass,
But you did.
but I did. But I think, just an advocate and so passionate and involved in your children's school and involved in the health council and involved in a national child welfare council about parent voice. So I want you to like talk about how that happened
Sure, sure.
from
I'd love to talk about that. Um, so once I got a little bit of eye opening that there were ways to do better, I needed all of it. I needed every last bit of it from every agency, and no one was going to tell me no, because this was for my kids and it was for me and for my kids, you know? And so I went wild dog on them, and I wasn't going to let go until they gave me what I needed, until I found out what I needed to find out. So I just pursued every opportunity that I came across. I started with Federation of Families. I learned how to be a peer support, helping parents who have children with mental illness. Um, I found out about Children's Trust in South Carolina, and I just went in there and I'm like, okay, what can we do? Um, got trained in Be Strong Cafe, which was another, life changing, eye opening, heart filling experience, just to know that, there are agencies out there that are trying to help us. There are programs out there that are trying to help us. And y'all, I'm talking like 10 years ago. I'm not even 5, 6 years ago. These are things that I'm starting to find out. Um, and so I just kept digging. I kept digging, whether they paid me or not, whether they gave me a gas card or not, if I had to come in there with my babies or not, I was there. And some of that persistence paid off. And I learned that being involved in my kids' education pretty much guaranteed their success. And why would I not want to do that? So any opportunity I had to be involved in school improvement councils or homeroom mom or field trips, I was there. Any opportunity, and I still worked. I had a job most of the time, but when I didn't have a job, I was always there. If I had a job, then working is hard. But I showed up when I could. I showed up when I could. I talked to the teachers. I went to the programs, um, and I just didn't stop. So I learned about more opportunities where the voice of lived experience was missing, and that wasn't fair. So if there had to be a voice and I felt like it was missing and I could fit it into my schedule, then that's something I did. And I ended up on the chair at the local children's hospital here in Columbia, because there was no community voice. There were people um, who had children who had conditions and illnesses, and they were very concerned about that and very knowledgeable about that. But when it came to the community as a whole, there wasn't anyone there representing those voices. So that had to change. And just being that person, consistently persistent, naturally determined. And I'm still not. Look, even in that journey, I even came across two more cases of child abuse and neglect, and it was because of poverty. It was because of trying to make things happen. So there's never there's never a place to stop working. There's never a time to just put it all down and say I've done enough, because children and families are forever, and that love and that strengthening is something we all deserve. All children, all families deserve that love and strengthening.
Wow. So you are currently the president of the, I don't know whether it's called president or not, but the school improvement council at your children's school.
This is
The health, the hospital one, right?
Yes, yep. The parent advisory council at the hospital is the chair position, and the chair at the school improvement council at my youngest kid that's in school, the elementary school. My 4-year-old's not in school yet.
And nationally, you also work nationally, yes?
Absolutely. And the Children's Trust Fund, the National Alliance, their networks are amazing. They put parents together from across the nation. And there's nothing better than learning that you have connections with people who are time zones away. There's nothing better than knowing that you have people who are living what you're living. They are feeling what you're feeling. They're struggling with what you're struggling with. They're celebrating, where you celebrate. That, and they aren't just next door. They're not the people that you just see at the grocery store. They're in every single time zone. And that's just something about that is very strengthening and empowering and joyful, to know that, I know people in Louisiana, I know people I know people in Illinois now, hot dog. So that the National Network and the Children's Trust Alliance and the Casey Family Foundation, they've been really integral, and the national, the family support centers. I forget what they're called. National Family Support Network, maybe. Yes.
That's where we met. We met because we were both on the closing panel for
Yep.
the
Together Families. Absolutely. That work is being done. And wherever that work is being done, family voice, lived experience voice needs to be there.
Awesome. So let's move on to our main topic for today. And we agreed that we would ground this in the concept of radical family engagement from the feds, from the Office of Early Childhood at the Administration on Children and Families. So Dee, if you could go back to the PowerPoint for a second. You got some love in the chat too, thanking for your transparency and kudos for raising 6 kids. Back in October, we had Melissa Brodowski was on and did a webinar on radical family engagement, and they had a whole week of webinars and meetings to try to prioritize this within the Office of Early Childhood. And you were involved in that, did you say, Tecoria?
I sure was, Kathy. I part of the planning, as they absolutely could not have done this without some parent voice, right? How dare they? How would they? What would that be? So I was not the only one, and I will say that proudly. There were a couple of other parents that were involved also, and the planning of it all, and kind of figuring out. This was started back in May, I believe. There was a conversation and a little bit of a talk with Dr. Bergeron and the crew over there. And so, well, what are we going to do next? So, well, we have a lot to do next. And these were some of the steps that came out of it. And at first, they were just going to be one webinar or 2 webinars. And we ended up with a week of events. And it was magnificent. It really was.
Great. So let's move to the next slide, and this would be Dr. B talking about what their concept of radical family engagement is. Okay, everybody, it's a short video.
Hello, it's wonderful to see everybody. This is Debbie Bergeron, Dr. Bergeron, Dr. B, to those of you who know me well, and to everyone else now, Dr. B, good to see you. I am so excited to be here talking about something we have coined here at Early Childhood Development, ECD, our federal office devoted to everything early childhood, have coined the phrase radical family engagement. And so I want to talk before we jump into anything about what we might mean by radical family engagement. When we started this work, we thought we need to define family engagement first. And as we thought about that, we thought, no, we really don't, because family engagement has a number of different definitions, and we think it's so specific to the communities in which it's happening that for us to define it at the federal level to mean something specific is to sort of undermine the whole point, which is that it's driven by families and it's driven by communities. So I'm not really interested in coming up with some very specific language that if an organization or a school or an early learning center is meaning that somehow they're not engaging families. Instead, we want to just talk about what it might mean to put the word radical in front of the family engagement that you're doing now, and what would that mean? And I'll talk to you a little bit about what it means to me and what it means to ECD, and a little bit about the impetus for all of that. I can tell you that after spending many decades in public education and then landing in the Office of Head Start to lead it, I had an immediate aha moment as I looked at how parents worked with Head Start and how Head Start worked with parents, and reflected on my own work as in school leadership, where I really tried hard and I did my best, and thought, I might have missed the mark on this. So I delved in deeper, and I found at the center of Head Start, and I use Head Start as an example. I think we can look at a lot of early childhood programs as an example, but I pick Head Start because Head Start has 55 plus years doing this kind of work. 55 years ago, before I think the phrase family engagement was very commonly used at all, Head Start knew that at the center of the success of the program was going to be the family, the parents. And they put them there, and they kept them there for 5.5 decades. So I feel like Head Start is a great resource from which to begin to have this conversation and to learn from an organization that has been serving our most vulnerable families successfully for a really long time. So at the center of Head Start's sort of philosophy is this one simple mantra. Parents are a child's first and most important teacher. So think about that. It's coming out of the gate recognizing that the parents, that the family knows that child, and at the end of the day, loves that child more than any system could. The system, by coming in to support the family, then engages that family and that child in a way that results in success in whatever goals it's trying to reach. So that's really getting at this from a place that, to me, from my experience in public schools, is kind of different from what I was looking to do. And the Office of Early Childhood Development is so excited to bring this conversation to the forefront. And we want to look at it from a bunch of different angles. We want to see what parents think. We want to see what the schools think. We want to bring our federal partners together. We want to look at philanthropy, all of these different organizational institutions that believe in early childhood, that believe in education, and know that we can do things better. How can we do that? We believe that it's that radical family engagement that's going to make the difference. So what would that mean? It would mean, number one, we would all embrace the idea that there is no one better than a child's parent to be on board and part of the process. And what does that look like, say, in a school system? If parents are partners. But we have to do more than just say parents are partners. We have to really make them partners. That means they're welcome in our buildings. They're welcome in our classrooms. It means they help us make really tough decisions around curriculum or hiring or spending decisions. And that's not reliant on whether they're, educated in the area of accounting. It's assuming that they are invested enough in their child's education to know if they sit down and we let them know how the system works, they can contribute to the conversation. It means that parents understand the system. So we're helping them to understand, how does a school operate? How do we make decisions? What kinds of priorities do we have? So that they can come at things from an angle that's got some empathy built into it for all the decisions that a school has to make. But it also helps them to understand how children learn, so that it's more than just about an end result on a test score. What's the process? And where does that child fit into the process? And how do we make sure that child is successful in the process? It really looks at trying to embrace the family as part of the whole system. And that's something that Head Start does really organically. And as I reflected on my work in education, I really thought about how my mantra was more, every child will succeed no matter what. And so what that really caused me to do is kind of isolate the family from my experience, to say, it doesn't matter what's going on over here. I can work with this child and I can get to a point of success. So it kind of alienated the family. And what I would love to see is this extension of what we see in Head Start and early education, where we embrace families, we bring them into the process, extended well beyond when a child is 5. And, we think of that as maybe going into a lot of folks are talking about in through 3rd grade, in through 5th grade. I'm going to be really radical, and I'm going to say until a kiddo crosses a graduation stage, the family should be part of the process. I'd look a little different in middle school and high school, but they should still feel invested in that process. And so that's what we're here to talk about. I don't know what this is going to look like. We just want to inspire the conversation, and we're excited to have you as part of this, thinking about it, contributing to it. And let's see where we can go on this really radical journey together. and bringing families into the process so that children can be as successful as possible. Thank you.
Awesome. So we're going to take down the PowerPoint and let Tecoria be big again. And we want you to comment on that, Tecoria. What is family engagement? What does radical family engagement mean to you? And based on your experience, have you ever experienced radical family engagement, or is it more of an ideal?
I really like Dr. B. I think she's great, but I think she's very much when she mentioned, that they're doing it, that is the radical of Head Start, that it's actually being done. It might not be perfect, but they have committed to it and they have made it a central part of their programming. What is family engagement? What does that look like to me? It looks like we the people as we the village. It looks like the end of the silo of the federal agencies and the state agencies, and then the families and communities. It looks like culturally responsive, because I've never really understood that phrasing, because I see it as respect, humility, and non-judgment. So those are the things that family engagement means to me. And Kathy, we were talking about this a little earlier. That word engagement, I'm kind of on the fence with it, because it doesn't feel as powerful as it should be for me. I think it should be a lot more clear that families are here, not engaged, but families are in it, part of the structure. So we're still working on that. Have I ever seen family engagement? I've seen it on paper. I've seen it in ideal, but I have not seen what I feel it should look like anywhere at 100%. I think.
Felt it.
Yeah, it hasn't possessed me to say, oh, this is what family engagement, ding, somebody winner, chicken dinner, tofu cutlet, whatever you eat, I have not seen that yet. But I know that agencies are trying, and I know that parents are ready. So in that space is where we are right now. Yeah, and that space there's a lot to be done in that space. There's a lot of work that can be done. And I really hope that for parents, we're ready, but we also need to make sure that we are confident, that we know that we are the leaders of our community, no matter if our community say hola, bonjour, aloha, yo, what's up, hello, it doesn't matter. We are the leaders in our community. So if we say yo, and the agency understands yo as what it is. And if we say bonjour no with the agency, they understand that equally, and there's no judgment. Because we, the parents, are the leaders of those communities. And we are here to be heard. We are here to be involved. We are here to to accept the responsibility of growing our community. We want to assume that responsibility. We know it's important. And
yeah. So I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier also, is like when Head Start has the parent advisory councils, it would be radical if the program would take the advice of the parents and actualize it and partner with them to implement it, right? I mean, that would be radical. It would be radical if it was about mutual assistance, and the providers put all of their efforts behind realizing the vision of the community leaders for what they thought needed to happen. Is that kind of...
I'm with you on that 100%, Kathy. I think that so many times the grant lines and the project codes and the deadlines and evaluations all get piled on top of the flesh and blood people who are living and breathing and working and loving and trying.
Yeah.
And that's
No, I'm sorry. Go.
No, that's just the disconnect. That's, how do agencies get beyond that? What do agencies need to do to to touch the human and not just the grant, or touch the people and not just the policy. What are you really doing? And in order to do that, agencies have to understand that they are not the only professional. Like, we professionalism, I know there's a thing about credentializing people with no letters behind their name, but if you give me credit and you hear me and you give me credit for the things that I bring to your agency, then you are credentializing me. You are giving me, um, uh, you know, credence to hear what I'm saying. You are giving me the ability. You're allowing me to unmute myself. You are saying, here's the space for you to unmute yourself, because you are in this process. And with that, we cannot do this without you. So we are going to put away our, oh no, the meetings are going to be so long, or we're going to have to explain these things, and we're going to have to, start all over, and we're going to have to listen to well, yeah, you're going to have to listen, because families have to give up something too to be there. We have to give up time. We have to prioritize, um, going to this place, or taking the time to be on this virtual platform. We have to rearrange, and also let's think about that parents aren't necessarily getting paid for this. This is free time involvement. This is volunteerism. It's really hard. PTA doesn't even want to give us dinner when we come because, of funding. So when agencies are asking parents to be there, you're working your 9 to 5, and that's your job. This is a parent's desire. This is a love act. How do you compensate? How do you reflect your appreciation for that? That needs to be top of the line.
So now we're really talking about barriers to family engagement, also to authentic and radical family engagement. And you talked about some of them. You talked about like people paying attention to funding guidelines and checking the boxes rather than, really authentically wanting to, seeing the value in wanting to engage parents. I would say that the money thing that you pointed out also, that's been something that we've been, since we started with parent cafes, which were developed by parents for parents, we have been promoting that people need, if you would be getting paid as a provider for organizing this event, then there's no reason you shouldn't be paying the often low income parents, to do the event as well. Like, why are you asking them to volunteer while you're getting paid? Like, it's an equity disconnect.
Right. And like Cecilia mentioned in the chat, the people have to work. How do we stay engaged after hours, especially when they're not being able to feed us, or have somewhere where the children can go so we can focus on the task at hand. There's really a responsibility on the agency's part. And that is, I think often, Kathy, I think that is a big barrier. The not wanting to assume the responsibility. And that only happens because the disconnect of, these are flesh and blood human people with hearts and minds, that's been lost. Because if you saw yourself, if this agency person who's saying no funding for that saw themselves in that community, they said, oh, no funding for it, I don't think it would be so easy just to say, nope, that can't happen. I think there would be more of a push, more of a way around, more of a, let's see how we can write this grant to make sure we include this. But if they had parents there, it might be a little easier to figure out.
Yeah, sometimes, what do you think about, why do you think that is? Like, why do you think there is that disconnect between the ideal and what happens?
So this might hurt some feelings, and I don't want to do that, but I'm going to have to be truthful. I think sometimes the people in the agencies see themselves as saviors, or paternally minded, well-meaning individuals who want to do something. They just want to do something. And they have all these good ideas to come to these other communities to do something. but the something is not defined, and it's just okay. It needs to be like this, you know. It's, you need to. We're gonna come over here and we're gonna fix this for you people because uh and meanwhile they go back to their communities that are where, what are they doing? Are they volunteering in their communities? Are they making sure the moms aren't drinking martinis at noon? I mean, are they making sure that these parents are going to be involved at the schools that their kids go to? And I'm speaking generally, and there stereotypes in there, but the truth of the matter is, if you come to my community and you say we're here to help, but you didn't ask me what I need, I'm not going to pay you any, I'm not going to care about what you're doing. I'm not going to support what you're doing, and I'm not going to make myself available for what you're doing. If you come to my community and say, we're going to help you and this is what we're going to do. If you didn't ask, then you're invading. If you didn't take the time to say, well, community, what would you like to see here? What help us uncover our strengths? Help us understand what we have here. If you don't have time for that, then you're just coming into my community to to put upon me what you think I should have. And I don't go into your community and do that. I don't go to your community and say, y'all need some more African Americans over here. Y'all need some more Latinos. Where are the colored folks in this? I don't do that, I mean, and that's again stereotyping, and I do apologize, but it's realistic,
Go beyond just asking, and then see. I was raised in family support, and I really believe that the principles of family support should be actualized. Where families are resources to themselves and other community members.
Absolutely.
Where programs are responsive, where they're culturally adaptive. And to me, one of the principles was that parents should be present at all phases of program development, implementation, governance, etc. And the premise behind that was that would make the services better. If the families were involved at all of those levels, it actually would be more successful as a program. And so to me, it's kind of like, and this is my question, it's not just ask you what you need, because then take it back to my workshop and see how I can provide it, right?
You're absolutely right, Kathy. You're absolutely right.
Me in all stages of what you're going to do.
Exactly. When we're talking about sharing power, that's exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about from the beginning to through the process until you get what you need, and then you figure out what else you need. And parents and lived experience, the voice of that has to be there the whole entire time, because other than that, we're checking boxes. Other than that, what are we showing our children? What are we giving our community for a long term? We're giving them pixie dust or something. We're not giving them anything to build on. We're not giving them anything to say, this is our community, put our flag in it, put our stamp on it. This is us. That is strengthening. That is sharing power. That is non-judgment. That is humility. That is authenticity. And it's privilege. That word comes up here for me. Privilege is a right. It's not a thing that some people have. I have a right in my community to have the privilege of living in my community. Like, I'm privileged to be here and where I am. I mean, it's not a thing that one category of humans have. It is not a thing that one category of several categories of humans don't have. It is something that we all have.
Well, or should. I mean, that's, to me, I always think that privilege is a good thing, and it should be expanded.
Yes.
It should be expanded. So
exactly.
Everyone has privilege.
Exactly.
I get that I'm white. I have white privilege. I get the benefit of the doubt when I walk into certain situations. And I feel like everybody should get that benefit of the doubt. Not that I should, it gets taken away from me. Like, you know, we have
Absolutely.
a question to Tecoria in the chat. So I'd like
I
to,
see that.
says, can you share an example of a successful approach for the initial ask and initial involvement of a community? Is it a listening session? Is it door to door? Is it identifying a community leader? What do you think initial involvement should look like?
Wow, Courtney. My first response is that that's going to vary from community to community. And sometimes identifying a community leader, that means you are going in thinking an agency is going in expecting to see something. And they may be surprised that the person with the nicest car and the biggest house is not the community leader, that the community leader is that grandma that sits on a corner and watches everything all day long. And that's the person who really knows what's going on. So I'd have to say the most successful approach is to be authentic and to go in the community and say, you know, flyers, mail cards, you know, we're here and we're listening. I think that a basic, you know, we're here and we're listening is the best successful approach that I've seen. Um,
Yeah, I
because
feel
it
like
opens the doors.
it's not just one listening session or
Right.
one door to door. Like it's a, I want to tell a little story. I know this is your interview, but
No, I love your
only
stories.
me. So I'm gonna, and maybe you've heard this before, but I remember I was young in family support. So this was like 25 years ago, and there was an agency in New Haven that knew exactly what the community needed and went in and started a family support center and set it up and put it up. And then the first weekend they were open, the community liberated all the furniture from the family support program. And the
Interesting.
leadership of the family support program, to their credit, were like, we did something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so they started again. And they went into the community and they said, we are thinking of starting a family support center. You know, these are our ideas. What do you want? What do you need? How can you what would be they started the conversation, but they didn't just start the conversation, they continued the conversation. And it became a very successful neighborhood alliance going forward.
Yes.
You know, because they didn't just pay lip service, but it was a hard lesson the first time, you know?
And sometimes those lessons are hard. And I think that's another barrier that agencies hear down the grapevine. Oh, this happened. Oh man, are you going to do that over there? Because, you know, and that is not healthy. That's not healthy in any relationship. And Cecilia, I agree with you again. And to take it to another point, this kind of thing needs to happen from the beginning. Educating young people, we need to educate everybody. It needs to start at schools, and I mean preschool. It needs to start at when you're changing your diaper. You know, let's talk about the protective factors. I'm not kidding, because just to let y'all know, the amount of trauma in America, I honestly think America is the most traumatized genome in the world. I think one out of, what's the number? 61% of Americans have at least one ACE, one adverse childhood experience, at least one. 16% have four or more. And that's the point where it starts getting into your health, right? So when we put all that together, everybody pretty much, I don't know who would not be in America, have been touched by some kind of trauma or some kind of, you know, hurt from a person that's been hurt. So in saying that, families at the table, we having the ability to say what we need, and agencies understanding that some of us are working through multi-generational trauma. So don't come into my community unless you are ready to sit with that. Don't come in my community if you're going to judge that.
So somebody has their hand raised.
I see that.
And she's asking in the chat to speak. So, you know, Sandra wants to speak. So Dee, can you unmute Sandra? And Sandra, you're going to need to unmute yourself too.
Okay. Okay.
Yay.
Hey, how you
Hey,
doing?
all right.
Great. Just want to say, because I'm not the typing person. Uh, I hear you because from Los Angeles. I work in gang community, and and I work with gang intervention for doing it for about 15 years. And they always, that question to me is just, what do we need? They ask whoever these officials are, and it's great, but you never see it. Or if you see it, it's too many limitations to it, or it's not the people, or they bring in people who don't really know. I'm gonna put it lightly, about the community or different things, because they use a lot of the ex gang members who to do the work, but they ain't willing to pay. Or when it comes to the business, then because they got records or they got this, but those are the people who can do the work. And it's a problem. So if they give you or apply or give you what we're asking for, in a sense, it come with people who hearts are not in it, or it's not a fact. So what we do need the most, we need the programs, we need the things for the poverty and the different things and different in the barriers, but utilize the people who will be more effective to do the work. And that's the biggest problem that my fight is in this for 15, 16 years. uh we all have something we did that we shouldn't have did, or regrets. But when we're going to be able to say, wow, that's the biggest schooling, I'm gonna say, when you lived it. Not the best schooling, maybe, because I didn't go to the university, because I lived it and God had brought me from it. Then I can be one of the best. I need the people who went to school and all that too. But don't say, because we are the best help for our community. So don't ask me what I need. And then when I tell you, then bring all the limitations, which not be effective. And then you says, what they call evidence best practice, saying it's not helping. It's not helping because you don't bring the right people for the evidence based practice. Okay, I don't want to go on, but y'all see, I'm very okay. I'm done.
I love that, Sandra. I love that. And those evidence-based practices, you know what, that's trickle down knowledge. And we don't need that because we have all the knowledge. And when they come in your community and they say, oh, well, we want to help you, we're going to listen, but we're still not going to, that they're still invading. They're not coming in with anything to say, let's get this done. And that lived experience, Sandra, they can't get that in the university. That is the best. You can't go write a book on Sandra's life or Tecoria's life or Kathy. We can't go write books on these experiences. We can't sit and have we can't. There's no coursework for how to survive living in a gang neighborhood. There's no coursework in living through adverse childhood experiences. There's no coursework for that. So there's no other expert but us. And that is why we have to show up and we have to demand and we have to take the no's and come back the next day and say, no was yesterday. What is today? And we have to, it is upon us to do this. And they haven't been listening, but that doesn't mean they won't. It doesn't mean that it's going to stop. There's been wave after wave of this, right? Kathy is
Yeah,
moving, but
but
it's slow.
I guess like I have two questions, and one of them, reaffirms this line of thinking, and the other one maybe moves us a little bit to a different kind of place about partnership. So the first one I would say is, can you speak a little bit to biases and tokenism in family engagement?
Tokenism is one of my favorites. To tokenism, I say tokens are for games. And I'm not playing around with my family. I'm not playing around with my community. Tokens are for games. And if agencies are still involved in that and they're wondering why their programs aren't catching on and they're not getting the numbers they want, and they're going home, with their big figures in their bank account, and oh, these people, as long as that authenticity is not there, as long as the agency representatives do not speak from their own experience with a heart of humility and non-judgment, then it's not going to be there. But how do we get them there? That's going to take
It feels like,
some.
are you saying like, how do we get them to the place where they really know in their guts and believe that this is going to be better if we have the voice of lived experience and we co-create with the people who know the community, know the needs, have seen things that work, have seen things that don't work, you know, right? Is that,
Yeah, and how do we trust them? Where is the point that the trust becomes great enough to when they say we need it, they get it? You know,
yeah,
where is that? You know, and that is a personal journey. Honestly, I've met a lot of people from agencies. Over these years, I've talked to a lot of them. I've gotten close to a lot of them, and a lot of us are on the journey. But it's very scary sometimes to see how much of a journey that some of these agency representatives need. They're back there, you know. So I'm sorry. I'm got my lights on. I'm a little hot.
okay. Tecoria, it's
So
like you said, like, how would it be for me in my community? Like if somebody invites me in, asks me for my perspective, and this has happened to me too, you know, that asks me for my perspective, says that they want to know what I think should be done. And then they invite me to this thing, they listen to me, and then they it goes into a black hole. Like the next thing I hear is that they're doing this whole other thing that has no relationship to what I said. Why would I continue to be engaged? Why
uh,
would I continue to be involved? You know?
we're not. And we're going to, and that's more of a diss than not even asking us in the first place. That's just saying, oh, we're going to go through these motions and we're going to play nice and then we're going to take your lunch money and run. I mean, that's really what it feels like. um, I honestly feel like engagement has to have family and live voice has to be instilled from the beginning as something that is important. It needs to be seen as necessary to child abuse prevention, because when you're in the community serving and strengthening a community in the way that they need it, then those things are going to happen. That is a preventive effect right there. Strengthening parents, strengthening families is prevention. And I mean, everybody, everybody in the human services field, teachers, doctors, lawyers, police, nurses, anybody, all of them need to understand the value of lived experience.
It's interesting. When we first started Be Strong Families, like we had an ad agency exec on our board, and you know he was really befuddled by the whole idea of why everybody was so in human services so intent on evidence-based practice. Because for him, as an ad agency person, he was like, if it makes sense to people, if they want it, if they understand it, then they'll buy it, right? So you have this whole culture built around capitalism and people
Mm-hmm.
being the experts about their own needs and people being able to get what they want. And then you have the human services field that runs on a completely different logic, you know? And that was,
It runs on that logic that America runs on, too much. That logic of, you know, these people over here have all the answers, and everybody else is just out of luck. And if you are experiencing poverty, if you are a person of color, if you are anything but in that circle of the people who know what to do and know when to do it, then you are valueless. And that is, it's sad, but
yeah,
it's changing. You know, I do want to make sure that we stay optimistic and positive about this, that, you know, be the good. There's a lot more of us now that are being the good in the world, even just a little bit. You know, even if today I'm not the best person, tomorrow I have an opportunity. And knowing that, learning better, doing better, it's a process. And I think 2020 in America, boy, if you haven't learned that it sucks sometimes for everybody, then I don't know where you've been. And if you haven't understood that, you know, at some point in your life, we're all going to need a helping hand. We're going to need somebody to understand us, to be gracious, to let us cry or have a fit or whatever it is we need to be doing. That I don't know where you've been in 2020. I think 2020 and all its ups and downs and craziness has also been very much an opportunity for us to find out who we are. And if that who we are is who we are showing, is who we are being. And if we are not being that person, then what are we going to do? What are we doing?
Wow, that's very powerful. We have a few. We could take one more question. Does anybody in the chat have a question for Tecoria or a comment? I guess one of the things we were talking about before this started, Tecoria, is how do you recognize brilliance and not let your bias about the way somebody's talking or the education blind you as a, you know what I'm saying?
I do, because I've struggled with that myself. It is hard when you're sitting in front of someone and you feel like you don't understand what they're saying. It is hard when, for example, a lived experience story. My grandmother was from a big country family, and she was like fifth or sixth of her family. She was the first one able to go to high school and graduate. So we're talking about the 30s in rural mountain South Carolina. Okay. Um, she got her high school degree, she got her diploma, and she made sure that all of her children and her grandchildren spoke only the English that you get out of the textbooks. There was no ain't, there was no, we couldn't even leave a preposition at the end of the sentence. Like, she was very strict about how we spoke. And that instilled to me a bias that if you don't speak English like this, then you're missing something, and that there's something that maybe you're just not as smart, or maybe you're just not as capable. Oh boy, was I wrong. And it took me some years, to come out of that, because that was a value I grew up in, and it just sat there. And I didn't try to work it. I didn't see a reason to go around it. My life was very small. I didn't really know a lot of people who spoke differently from me. Then I moved to Charleston. I moved to Johns Island in the heart of Geechee country. And nobody out there sounded like me. I was just I was a stranger out there. And that whole idea of a lack of intellect, because that went out the window. I got to know people. I got to feel people. There was no limitation on intellect or love or humility or authenticity or grace, because of the way words are pronounced or the way words are used. There's no limitation on any of those human things because of the words you use. And that's the thing that I want every parent on here who's ever been like, I don't want to talk because I might say the wrong thing. Say the wrong thing. Show up and say the word that you didn't mean to say. Say all the, what really counts is that you showed up, and you spoke from your heart, and you spoke truth of your lived experiences. Use whatever words you want. Because if they're looking at those words and they're judging you, and that is incorrect, and they need to grow up and they need to learn better, because it happens. It happened for me, so I know. So parents, if you have the opportunity, speak your truth. Do not be concerned about your accent or your pronunciation or your use of big words. Big words really are complicated. And honestly, if you speak from your heart, there's nothing better than simple truth that rides on that lived experience. So please be encouraged to step up and speak up.
I know we probably should end there, but I did want to, there are two questions. And my question, there was something said earlier about, there being no value to evidence-based practice, or people with credentials or schooling, or, I guess but you were also talking about how, you valued the expertise of people who had some of that kind of knowledge, but it needed to be reality checked with lived experience, or it needed to be, I don't remember exactly. Can you speak about that? Like, what room is there in the partnership for the professionals or the evidence-based practice?
Yes, the trickle down knowledge and the school learning, absolutely. So I love school. I'd be in school right now if I had the capacity. I'd study neuroscience. Honestly, I find it amazing. Um, but that doesn't increase or decrease my lived experience. And I think that that point of when parents are given credit, that strengthens their voice. And I think that, wow, parents, especially with systems, so the agencies, they build these structures and they put up these frameworks and it looks real nice. And they say, okay, come on in. But parents are the ones that are coming in the door. So we are the experts of everything that happens on the outward facing, right? We are always the experts on the outward facing schools, um, uh, nonprofits, government. We are always the out facing experts. So claim that expertise and say, I am a professional in your system that you built, but I use. They can't build it and use it. They can only do one or the other. So let them be the professionals in the building, okay? But it can't be used without us. And so when they welcome us and they say, okay, we need to build this for you, show up, do show up. Because also, and one of the barriers we didn't talk about is sometimes parents don't show up. So please show up, even if it's just one of you. That one of you is more than that they would have had. So, be the outward facing professional. You know how that thing works. You know how it goes. You know what happens. So use your lived experience, use your voice, and show up and make sure they know that you are an expert.
Yeah,
Make sure that.
and that's that experience design. It's like I can tell, and that's what I was saying in terms of capitalism. Like when you're marketing a product, you care what the consumers think about it. So
Absolutely.
you know that they'll tell you what doesn't work about it. So but it's how do we collaborate to make it better? And Courtney was saying another question was, what is one piece of advice or resource you would give to someone who's new to engaging parents? And then how do you entice parents to show up?
Well, I answered a little bit of that in the chat. How do you do it? You tell them don't stop, get it. That's when you want to engage parents, don't stop. If it didn't work this time, don't stop, get it. Just don't stop and make it your priority. The second part, how do you entice parents to show up? Honestly, as a parent, I would have to say part of that enticing has to start here. Like you have to entice yourself to show up because there are ways to show up that they might not be sharing with you, like school improvement councils or parent advisory councils at hospitals, because it's easier that way. But if you show up and they see how valuable your lived experience is, then do that. I think agencies should definitely pay parents. I think we should get a stipend that is equivalent to whatever amount of money that the highest person in that room at that time is getting paid. So if they are getting the equivalent of $60 an hour, then that parent who sat in that meeting for 2 hours should get $120 before they leave the building. I feel like parents should, honestly, at the end of the Radical Family Engagement Week, there was a question that, what would you like to see happen? And I said, my answer was that there should be a shadow government that contains only parents. There should be a president, a parent president, and that kid president. There should definitely be a kid president. I would vote for that guy. He's great. There should be a shadow a parent governor. There should be a shadow parent senator. There should be parents everywhere because we are everywhere. And it is our lived experience that makes it we the people, we the village. And that is what brings us all together, that we all have lived something. And not separating that experience from what you are doing in your agency or in your work is what brings value to your work. Stay who you are, be who you are, speak who you are, show up 100%, and this work will get done.
Thank you so much, Tecoria. It was fabulous to hear you and fabulous to be engaged with you. And I appreciate your candor and I appreciate the way you push us and I appreciate the way you speak the truth. And I think that authenticity that you emphasized from the very beginning of this, you know, part of how do you get parents to show up? It's not us versus them, you know, it's like all of us. It's the we the village, you know, that if you really have that in your heart and you really know that it's going to be better if the parents are there, then you'll get them to come the first time, and you'll keep them coming by acting on what they ask you to do. Like, and that's what makes me mad after so many years is like people think it's all about the food or the incentive or the, you know, how about just doing what you say you'll do? Like
valuing that voice.
Okay, right?
Showing the value, showing the credit, showing that parents, yes, we did that. Putting our name on it when we make a policy or a practice, or we give an idea that turns into something great. Put our name on it. Give us that credit. Give us those credentials.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. We're a little bit over time, so I'm going to go back to just say, you said the hour would go fast, and it really did. So tomorrow, Tecoria told us about the Child Welfare Information Gateway, and tomorrow we have a webinar on that because we know they have great resources, and we know like no one has time to go through it themselves. So that's like a walk there. And then there's the trauma. You talked about trauma. And we have on Wednesday a webinar of Judith Irwin Shapiro, A Corrective Perspective on Empowerment After Trauma, 9 Steps to Freedom, which I feel is really going to be good because it's not about healing as much as it's about gaining your power and being liberated from the circumstances. Home Sweet Classroom with Tunga. And then on Friday, it's going to be Alex, hopefully Alex and Sarita on A More Perfect Union. And how do we make those relationships that bridge the chasms? So join us again. If not tomorrow, next time you can. And we appreciate all of you. Thank all of you. Fill out the poll before you leave. What's the next slide, Dee? Come on, we got to keep it going. Oh, we have masks. Wear a mask. Buy a mask. Next one. Show your love. Amplify. Amplify. That's creating the world we want to see. Show your love. And if you have something that you'd like to share on a webinar, or you want to be interviewed like Tecoria, hit me up. Next slide, Dee. This is my email address, Kathy@BeStrongFamilies.net. So thank you so much. And credit to Gable Oaks Parent Group for the We the Village. It's the name of their group and it's powerful. Thank you, Tecoria, and thank you for acknowledging them because that's part of, you know, put our name on it, right?
Absolutely. I want to make sure I got that in there. Go,
Awesome.
Gable Oaks.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
You.
All righty.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.